Hello, I'm Porschia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about burnout stages with Jamila Brown. Jamila Brown is a powerhouse who's walked the path from the sports arena to managing billions in corporate America. She now leads as a coach, consultant, podcaster, and speaker. Jamila's corporate journey reads like a who's who of global giants, including the likes of Champ Sports, Walmart, Ross Stores, Dollar General, and the visionaries at 5-Minute Career Hack. Jamila's reputation as a branding, content, and leadership development guru is a foundational piece of her success. Organizations and individuals turn to her to transform their status quo into something extraordinary. Jamila doesn't just talk the talk, she hosts the talk. Her podcast with co-hosts Alicia Wade and Candace Hunt is a weekly stop for thought leaders, visionaries, and entrepreneurs sharing their wisdom with the world and providing actionable life hacks along the way. Hi, Jamila. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing, and thank you for that warm and exciting introduction.
Yes. We like to roll out the red carpet here on the Career 101 podcast.
I feel the welcome.
Good. We are excited to have you with us to discuss burnout stages. But first, we want to know a little more about you. So tell me about 7-year-old Jamila.
So 7-year-old Jamila would have been in about first, maybe going into second grade. I don't remember exactly. But I'll tell you, it was a pivotal moment in my life, ironically enough, especially if it was first grade. I can't remember exactly. But I had an incredible first grade teacher. And at that point, I'd been playing basketball or just with my cousins and kids outside at that point. And I'd started doing it. And I was really gaining a passion for it. And it coupled with my parents' support and that specific teacher just empowered me to be the person that I am today. Her name was Miss Ritchie. I want to say her name out loud, wherever she might be. But I felt seen, most importantly. And she made me feel like I could conquer the world, whether that was in the classroom or on the basketball court. And probably since that point, probably one of my best grade years as well was first grade, believe it or not, just because I was so inspired. And it showcases the power of having great mentors, coaches, and leaders around you in your life. So that's 7-year-old Jamila, enthused in the classroom as well as basketball, which took on a huge part of my life as I move forward and to this day.
Yeah, that is great, Jamila. You make a great point about teachers, mentors, coaches, really people who believe in you. I don't know if you had this experience, but I was like the tallest kid in my class.
Yeah, me too.
It was basketball kind of due to height. But I was one of those kids that stopped growing in middle school. So I'm only 5'8", but I was the tallest up until then. So
same here. Exact same story too. I probably about 8th grade, 9th grade, I stopped growing. I'm 5'8" as well. Yeah.
We've got even more similarities, Jamila.
Exactly.
Did you have the experience I did where you went from having to play center and then your position shifted quickly? I was center, then power forward, then small forward. And then I was going to end up going to 2 guard before I stopped playing in high school. What are your...
Same story. Played every position except for the point guard position, because I probably didn't develop those skills early enough to be a point guard. But other than that, played every position. And it helped me as I continued to pursue basketball into college. It really helped me out at Loyola University to be able to guard multiple positions because we were a smaller team when I was in college. So it paid off.
Great. What did you want to be when you grew up? We heard about basketball. Was it in terms of being a professional athlete, or was it something else?
Honestly, by the time I got to college, and it started in high school, don't get me wrong, my dad was an artist, and he was a layout artist for the local paper here for over 30 years. and did most of the advertising. Him and a few other people did most of the advertising for all of the businesses in the greater New Orleans area. And so I grew up around the arts in that way, but didn't take an interest in it fully until I was in high school. And I actually did a painting, an acrylic painting of Malcolm X my senior year in high school that won, I believe I won like third place in an award contest. And it just invigorated me to continue to want to pursue it. However, I get to college, and this is during the Cosby Show Different World era. I get to college, and if you experienced it, that every Black kid had parents that wanted their kids to be doctors and lawyers, right? Because of the heightened influence of those two shows. So my dad, when I told him my freshman year, I want to major in art, right? You would think him being an artist, he would be just elated, excited, just ready for me to follow in his footsteps. And he was not at all. It was probably our first major kind of young adult argument, and we didn't talk for 2 or 3 months because it was my first kind of big decision I was going to make, and I really wanted to do it, and he really didn't want me to do it. And then I ended up going with marketing as a hybrid solution because of course, at that age, I didn't want to disappoint my dad, but I truly wanted to major in art, graphic design specifically. So full circle moment, I find myself here as a independent contractor. I wouldn't call it a full-blown business, but I do all of our graphic design, editing, and producing for our podcast at the 5 Minute Career Hack. And I also do the same for other businesses as well. So I'm still I'm getting to do what he didn't want me to do in the first place. So that was my passion, has always been my passion, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to find what worked for you, whether that be the art within the marketing,
Yeah.
and still pursue that. It's so interesting that you mentioned that because we work with a lot of clients who are artistic or in other creative industries. And we hear a lot that family members, friends, even just people in college, other professors maybe would say things like, hey, you're not going to make a living doing that, or they don't want you to struggle, a key word.
That's exactly what it was. Yep.
So just having the strength to move through that. And you made me think back in episode 3, we talked to, that one was about entrepreneurship and pursuing your passion. And our guest, she'd worked in the insurance industry, but realized she'd always wanted to be an artist. Back and became an artist and started her own fine art business. So it's great for people to have that drive like you do and like she did to find ways to incorporate what you love.
Yeah, it is so important. I know you want to make money, you want to make a living, but when you're in your purpose and your passion collectively, everything will work out. Everything will work out. And I know that wasn't an advice moment, but everything works out when you're in a thing that you love and you're truly passionate about. And then it contributes to your well-being when you're fulfilled in the thing that you're actually doing.
Yes. So tell us about some highlights or pivotal moments in your career before you started the business that you have now.
So for me, I spent most of my corporate America career in retail, so in operations and in merchandising. So I would say that I was tried by the fire at a very early age with responsibility for billion-dollar P&Ls in my 20s. And it's really unheard of to have that level of responsibility that early in your career. But working for one of the largest companies in the world, there's nothing but scale all over the place, and volume and money and products even that you end up managing. And during that time, it was such a critical point in my career in building confidence for me in what I was capable of doing as I've moved into running my own businesses. It was a pivotal moment for building confidence for me. But it was also a source of burnout because the level of work that you're doing there to catch up to not maybe having all the experience that a 50-year-old would have that I didn't have in my 20s with what I was doing, you have to make up for it in the hustle, if that makes sense. So there are some downsides to some of those great accomplishments of managing billion-dollar video game category or managing a billion-dollar store portfolio. There are some drawbacks to it at an early age.
Yeah, I'm sure. You touched on a lot of great things there. One thing that we see a lot with our organizational clients and our clients who are leaders, even sometimes if we're working with them individually, is to your point, being a manager or leader and you are older than a lot of the direct reports that you have. And so that dynamic where you might even be in a different generation, some of your direct reports and how that can play out in the working world. So did you have experience with that or?
I would say for me at the time, and I'm a fully transparent person at the time, and you may have experienced this in throughout your career and your career journey and path, education as well. More often than not, I was the only woman, the only Black woman in that setting. And then you couple that with the young. So it's like the trifecta of the only, in my opinion, that I was experiencing during that time in my career. And so you hear the comments. Who did you sleep with to get there? She couldn't possibly be qualified. Who does she know? And on. So those were some of the hugely negative things that I experienced during that time, discriminatory things at that. And then there was the other side of it where I had some older white males, in fact, that were supportive and helping me navigate my career, my profession, and provided what one of my mentors called as head cover. And then I had some incredible, Cole Brown being one of them, incredible mentors and coaches and champions and sponsors that helped to accelerate me as well, that were Black females. So there was a positive, of course, in order for me to do the things that I was able to do during that season of my life. But there were a lot of negatives, a lot of negatives towards being the only, and then there being a generational difference as well as a race and experience difference.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. As you mentioned, you have a very interesting background. What motivated you to start your own business?
Burnout actually moved me out of corporate America. I knew that when I was transitioning from one role, thinking I was about to take another role. I think it was late 2018, I thought I was going to work for this other company, did the interview, got everything I wanted from an offer standpoint. And I flew back home after the final interview. I think it was about 1 o'clock. I went to sleep. I was a little tired, went to sleep, and I didn't wake up till the next day at 1 o'clock. So I slept for 24 hours straight. And I woke up and I was like, oh, what's going on? I'm not sick. Nothing's wrong. And burnout wasn't a word that was being used at that time. So I had no idea what was going on. But when I woke up immediately, the thought hit my spirit, I've got to bet on me. And I had no idea at that point what I was going to be doing, how I was going to do it, but I knew I was done. And I reached out to the company and the person that was hiring me to be on their team. And I said, this has been an incredible interview process, and I appreciate the job offer. Everything is great, but it's time for me to bet on me. And we had a great conversation, left everything on good terms, and I hadn't looked back since. And again, at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then one of the co-founders at the 5-Minute Career Hack, Candace, she reached out to me. Honestly, it was a year later, and she said, "Hey, Jay, I know you're spending a lot of time on the phone. I'm spending a lot of time on the phone in the evenings after work with people, coaching and mentoring them and providing advice. And I feel like we could just do more and save ourselves some time." And that was the birth of the 5-Minute Career Hack. And it's ultimately how we got the 5-minute in the coaching company name, because we want to do what we can in a short period of time through our podcast, through our courses, as well as our workshops. I know you've probably attended training and things of that nature that are 5 days, 8 to 5 with a 30-minute break, and you're sitting down and they're just downloading information to you. And you take about 10% over the long haul that you can actually implement in your life. And so we wanted to change that a little bit. Not to say that there's not a place for those things, because there is, absolutely. But how do we give the individual as well as organizations something that they can leverage in a shorter period of time that's more impactful in that short period of time? So that's how the business came about. It started with me being burnt out, which is now the word that I use for it. I didn't know what it was at the time. And then fast forward to we were just on the phone individually a lot for hours at a time after the work day, till sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night. And we just felt like we could really get more of this information to other people to help other people. And that's really where our passion is.
Wow, that is very powerful. So, we discussed burnout in the workplace on the podcast back during episode 48. Why do you think discussing burnout at work is important?
I think today, even more so back when I experienced it back in 2018, or that it probably was happening over the course of a few years leading up to 2018. But today, with the impact that we still haven't fully realized of what COVID has done to our generation, future generations, as well as the generation in front of us, the impact we don't even know at this point. I think in 20 years, someone will have all the studies and research compiled and we'll know what the result was. But we're experiencing it live right now with no playbook. And I think that has doubled down on what burnout was described as for everyone. And discussing it in the workplace as well as on our podcast, number one, gives people the comfort and sense that they're not alone. That's the first thing. You're not alone. More people experience it, whether they know what it is or not, than anything. And so I think that's the first thing. That's why it's so important, so that people don't feel isolated. Because I didn't know, I had no clue what was wrong with me. I just knew that I was super fatigued and mentally drained. And I just did not want to keep doing whatever it was. I needed something completely different. So I think because we were not put on this earth to be alone, we need to be in community, that knowing that other people could be experiencing burnout is crucial. I think that's the first and most important thing for anyone that's listening, that if you're experiencing any types of symptoms or signs of burnout, that you're not alone. Now, the severity of that burnout is different for everyone in different stages and may require medical attention. So if you feel like you might need that, I always like to share, please don't hesitate to reach out to a professional. But I think it's important that people know that there's so many people challenged with this in their lifetime.
Yeah, many professionals and executives struggle with understanding burnout. Can you explain the stages of burnout?
So for me, and I always like to go from a personal perspective, but what I will tell everyone before I even share the personal perspective is that it can be very different for everyone, which is also why it's important to reach out, to be in community, coach, doctor if needed, if you have to go to that next step. But for me personally, it started, and you asked the question early in the interview about what was I doing before I got to 5-Minute Career Hack. And then before that question, you asked, what was I most passionate about? And was it the thing that I ended up doing in my career? And it wasn't. And there's going to be, if you Google the stages of burnout, there are going to be these things that you can walk through. However, for me, burnout started when I didn't make the decision to do what I really wanted to do. That was the first stage of me entering burnout. In college, not the workplace. In college, my sophomore year, when I declared my major to major in marketing, that's when burnout started. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the curriculum that I was studying, but because inside of me, I knew I wanted to do something else and I was settling, it started there. And then it started to compound because every decision I made from that point forward was influenced by that first decision. And so as I moved forward, I took my first role in retail, then I took the second role, and then I decided, in order for me to keep advancing my career, I need to get an MBA. Got my MBA with a concentration in marketing, and I continued to grow my career. So I'm compounding the very first decision. Fast forward now, I'm 15 years into this thing. So I could very well say all of my burnout started with this specific job or this boss or this situation, but it really started with me not following my passion. And I knew that to be that since I was in high school. And I always tell people, the source of your happiness and joy you'll probably find and something that you really enjoyed during your childhood or adolescence or teenage years. It's there. Now it's packed and buried under a lot of stuff, experiences, possibly even traumas, but it's there. And taking the time to work through and find that thing normally begins the unlock. I think you described a client that opened up the fine arts business, and unpacking all of that to get back to that place, probably the happiest she's ever been.
Yeah.
So I always like to share that, because corporate America is not a person. It's a system, it's a structure, it's a business. There are people that work in it, but it's not a person. And yeah, your boss and the situation on your job can cause undue stress and burnout. Absolutely. Not saying it can't, but you chose that job, and more often than not interviewed with your boss. Now, sometimes once you're there, you get realigned to other people, but you still have the choice to move on before the situation gets out of hand. So I always like to describe that versus just giving the textbook stages of burnout, because your experience, it's important to find out where it started.
I think that's an excellent way to think about it, and for people to really focus on their background and what they might have experienced. What are some common burnout symptoms you've seen other people experience or yourself? The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. More and more professionals and executives are setting out to achieve their career goals. But without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Whether you need career coaching, interview coaching, or a professional resume, we're here to help. Check us out on our website, fly-highcoaching.com.
Yeah. I will tell you, fatigue is at the top of the list. Lack of clarity, like cloudy brain fog, is a very common one that I hear often, because you're used to being able to function and process information a certain way. And now it doesn't seem quite like everything, all the dots are connecting as fast as they normally would. Your processor isn't processing the way it normally processes. The inability or drive to want to do things and enjoy things that you would normally enjoy in your personal life. So it's not just in the workplace, but all of a sudden you don't feel like going out as much as you do, or you don't enjoy the same activities, or you're not as inspired to do the same activities or play with your kids. Certain things are just falling off, if you will, that you're accustomed to. So I always like to share that one. Those are probably the top three for anyone that I've coached or had conversations with about stress or burnout. Those are oftentimes the common things. That lack of motivation is a heavy one.
Yeah, I think those are really some of the common ones we've seen too, before you get to the physical aspects where people start talking about headaches, trouble sleeping, heart racing, just letting your anxiety out of
Right.
when there's no kind of stimulus for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think those are all symptoms that people should be aware of. Thank you for mentioning those. Uh,
Absolutely.
from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen executives and professionals have with burnout?
Number one is what I said earlier. Number one is being just knowing that's what I'm experiencing. Because oftentimes, just like most everything else that you get diagnosed for, like it starts with something, but you don't even know what's wrong. And then you have to go through the symptoms, the signs, and say, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. That's probably step one. That's the struggle, is I know something's a little off, don't know what it is. So that's number one. I would say, secondly, people, executives, mid-level managers, I don't have time to stop for this. I don't have time to stop for this. Whatever this is, I've got to figure out how to push through. And if you've gotten to an executive level, if there's a habit that you've created, it's called muscle through. I believe that should become a world-renowned competency. I know we have like communication and customer service, right? But I think muscle through should absolutely be a competency, because you have effectively learned how to do that if you've gotten to that position in your career. and you will sideline your mental health, your physical health, and your emotional health in an effort to continue to muscle through what you're experiencing. So those are the two things that I think are the two biggest challenges: identifying and awareness around what you're actually experiencing, and then to challenge yourself not to just muscle through, because I still have a deadline, I still have to deliver, but you might even need a leave of absence. How do I do the work and take a leave so I can take care of myself?
Yeah, that I like how you touched on that muscle through. I think some of the ways that I've heard it put and discussed with clients, grit,
Mm-hmm.
resilience, that mental fortitude. And I don't know if you see this with your clients, Jamila, but it's actually, I think, a lot tougher for former athletes, high performers, people who high achievers, because they start to rely on that muscle through, that grit, and it can be at the expense of their mental, physical, emotional health. And so for them to take a break is different than, I think, someone who's used to coasting. To get certain people, high achievers, to slow down and have the time, to your point, to address the burnout can be a bit more challenging than for other people. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. You put it very eloquently. It's probably almost, I'm not going to say impossible, because eventually you're going to get stopped, but it's almost impossible for high achievers and people that muscle through and have built that muscle. It's almost impossible to get them to turn off. And you couple that with someone that has played sports, because you're taught to play through nicks, little small injuries that aren't going to damage you if you keep playing. So you're taught this function at an early age. Oh, it's just a little, I'm going to be good. I coach basketball now, and I always tell my kids, because in basketball, you're going to jam fingers, you're going to break fingers just because of the speed of the ball. And if somebody touches it, it's going to hit your finger awkwardly and break it or jam it. Known fact. So I always tell them I've broken all but one of my fingers in my lifetime, and I never missed a game or practice because of it. Because once all they can do, unless it's like severe, like dislocation or something, is keep it together, let it heal, adjust, or put it back. That's all, and keep playing.
Yeah.
And it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna hurt, and you're just gonna get used to playing while it's hurt. So when you learn that at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, so think about any other pain that can come from burnout in the workplace, whether that's chronic shoulder pain, neck pain, headaches, like you mentioned earlier, migraines, severe fatigue. Oh, it's just like the broken finger when I was 13. I just keep playing. It's just going to hurt. So to get that high achiever, former athlete, combined, accomplished a lot in their career, to get them to slow down and stop and address what they're feeling physiologically is very difficult, because you've been trained to muscle through and persevere, grit, resilience. And I think the thing that I want everyone to be aware of that's listening is that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with you, because the very thing that we're talking about is a strength. It's a good thing that you're able to get through some things and muscle through some things. You're probably also the person that gets things done in your family and makes sure that things stay afloat in your family. And it's a great strength. But every great strength also provides a blind spot for you. And this could very well be that blind spot. And so that goes with any strength that you might have in your life. There's a blind spot that strength creates. It's just part of being a human being. So there's nothing wrong. It's just be aware. Be aware of the fact that's your superpower. And because it's my superpower, I've got to have a Robin next to me to offset.
Great way to put that. So, what are some other tips or suggestions you'd give to someone who wants to recover from their burnout?
So, depending upon where you are, and I'll mention it for the third or fourth time, depending upon where you are on burnout and how severe it is, if you feel like you need additional support, medical attention, a doctor, or need to speak with someone, do that. Please do that. Don't think you can fix it by yourself. So, I want to say that first, because I know some people it's more extreme or could be heading to a more extreme place. And then for anyone else that may be just experiencing some mild symptoms or going through the stages of the burnout cycle, I believe it's important to be in community. One of the great things about the human race is that we're not alone. There's a lot of us on the planet Earth. So doing things in community has so many benefits, um, proven medical benefits, not just because it makes us feel good emotionally. There are proven medical, physiological benefits to doing things in community to add longevity even to your life. So the number one thing, without turning this into a prescription, the number one thing I suggest is to do it in community. Don't attempt to do it alone. If that means a doctor or a professional, a coach, there's hundreds of communities, if not thousands of communities out there that specialize in this that you can become a part of. That's my number one recommendation for individuals. And of course, there's resources that I know we can leave in the show notes and description, but I want to really tap dance on the community piece, because once you're in a community for that, you'll find other commonalities that'll also benefit you and probably your family as well.
Those are all great tips. And something else that I think is really great, Jamila, is that you also work with organizations. So we do the same. We work with individuals and organizations. So to flip this conversation a little bit, how do you think companies can address burnout within their organization?
I am a firm believer when it comes to organizations. I'm a firm believer in the total employment life cycle, not just once you're on the job. I believe it starts in the interview process. I think it starts in HR on the benefits and compensation side of the equation. So if I were interviewing you for a role, the job description should read that this is a part of our culture. Then when you interview, you should see evidence that your well-being is important to our company and our company culture. Then when you sign on and you're now in position, when you go to your online resource center for the company, you should see evidence of those resources and benefits for you to support your well-being individually. And then when you're in meetings, when you're on projects, communication, there should be evidence of it there. Even when you leave and move on, transition or what have you, there should be evidence there. An exit interview, which some agree, I think there's a divide. I've been reading about that recently. There might be a divide on whether or not they're useful. However, even in that exit interview, that is a function of well-being, is to ask you about your experience. That's a function of that being a part of an organization's culture. So I think it has to be infused in every portion of the employment life cycle for it to be impactful. It can't just be we have a department. If you're having some challenges, go over here. I think that's super important.
I agree. So tell us more about 5 Minute Career Hack.
So at the 5 Minute Career Hack, just like the title says, we try to give you bite-sized chunks of career hacks with no fluff and all action so that you can help change the trajectory of your career and pivot in your career compensation and your confidence. That's so important, that confidence piece. We say it first, but it's really the foundation of you having the courage, whether it's you're dealing with burnout or you're looking to transition to another role that's completely out of your field of study or experience, or you just want to get more money. Let's talk about the bag. Whatever that might be, we're going to support you in having the confidence with the expertise to be able to go do those things. So we've got our flagship course, Career Hacks Masters course, that's available on demand for individuals, our podcasts on all streaming platforms, as well as our 3 main workshops that we do for organizations, which is the Brand Whisperer, which is all about helping you build a brand. We've also got our Renew Career Wellness, which is centered around helping you through those burnout stages and making sure we promote well-being, and even if you're not experiencing burnout. And then our Feedback Renaissance. That's an area that all 3 of us are extremely passionate about, because we found that it is oftentimes time-consuming as well as tough for leaders to give great feedback. to help individuals in their career. So we want to prepare organizations to be able to do that, as well as individuals to be able to give it. So those are 3 flagship workshops that we do for organizations, along with a few others that we do at special request. So that's the 5-minute career act. That's what we do. And definitely reach out to us if you need anything.
Yes, we'll be providing a link to your website and other social channels in our show notes so that people can find you online. Now, Jamila, I want to ask you our final question that we ask all of our guests. And that is, how do you think executives or professionals can get a positive edge in their career?
I'll start with the question you asked me. Tell us about 7-year-old Jamila. And I believe if your passion and your purpose intersect and you're able to do those things, even if it's not currently in your career, but you're able to feed that, you're winning. You've won at the game of life. So that's what I would leave everyone with.
Jamila, you have shared a lot of insights with us today, and I'm sure our listeners can use it to be more confident in their careers. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I love the work that you're doing and can't wait for more opportunities for us to collaborate.
Thank you. This episode was brought to you by the Bravebird Career Alliance, the go-to membership designed for seasoned executives and ambitious professionals with everything you need for career planning, strategy, training, and support. Thank you again for listening to the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. If you enjoyed hanging out with us, please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. Until next time, here's to your success.